Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's March 25th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and it was an interesting day. This is really, for the most part, a range type day. You can see we never could really get below this support of around 27.90 today. We actually broke through here temporarily, but if you come back and look, there's a larger two-tiered channel working down, and we got a break right here. And then we moved and we just made a new low, and then it reversed and went back into the range and headed back to the upper side today. So either way you saw this, you could play it either way for the most part. Personally, I think you're better off just playing the short-term stuff in here. This trend here, if you drew it off this first swing, you might have caught this trade here, but other than that, it doesn't really help you here. Like even on this part right here, even though you might have got a trade off that, you're better off playing the shorter term trend working up, and for because this leads you into shorts. And even though there's a failed second entry long here that worked, I think that's risky taking that trade because we're in a strong uptrend working up, and it's a pretty obvious trend here. When it bounced here, it was really obvious. So really, I just think you were better off. There is one short here. I didn't mark it. You probably could argue for that one. I'll mark it. But other than that, I think you're better off to play the range today. But the two-tiered channel, you could find this fairly early. You really might have found it before prices even got up here. It's a little hard to know the right angle here. You really needed this swing here and then drop it down. So, and of course, then you can see the midline, but the midline, I mean, it's relatively obvious we're playing this line here, but it wasn't real obvious until later down here. So, um, personally, I think, you wanted to look at it both ways, but you were better off playing this, playing the. Okay, I had to turn my ringer off on my phone because as soon as I start trying to do this chart lesson every day, that phone starts ringing off the hook. I can sit here all day and it won't ring, but you let me try to accomplish something and it'll start ringing. So I apologize. But anyway, let's back out here, talk about the trades. As I said, you could play this both ways, range or, I mean, even the two-tier down channel. It's a very flat, or I'm sorry, down trend. It's a very flat two-tier trend, but you can see it's so wide that there's some very large moves within it. And I mean, there were some nice moves today, in fact. So uh, just something to think about there. But I'm gonna back on out where you can see this, and we'll go over the trades. 7 o'clock came right in this little move up, and it was pretty clear we were in this trading range here. A little earlier when I first got here, you might have had it over here, but as the 7 o'clock hour started, you needed to drop it down where your closes are right here. And we're just working from side to side. But notice this high, and then you tested it once, and then you drop down, and came back and tested, and you get this second entry short with a very bearish bar. It actually broke higher and turned and went out the other side. You might have just gone put your sell stop one tick below this bar, but you're probably better off to wait on this one to close and just drop your sell sell stop order right there. And that was a quick, easy move right out of the gate. Um, I don't know if I would have tried to hold a runner here or not, but I mean, it was a quick, easy trade, and you could have gotten a couple of points out of a runner if you did have one. And then notice what happens. You're working down, and you come back, and you get a first entry, and you come back, and then you get a second entry. This is a failed second entry long. Pull back first entry, then second entry. I marked this one green. The fact that this is a breakout of this little range, there's a good chance it's going to fail, but it is a failed second entry long, and it is a second entry short. It's a relatively neutral bar. There's not a lot of room here. I marked it green. It would have worked without any hitches or anything, but these trades usually fail, and even though this one would have worked, it was just a matter of a few minutes till you had a failed second entry short and going long the other direction. That's a perfect little setup. Notice where it comes back to the support resistance area. And you get that when it broke one tick above these two bars, that made it a failed second entry short. And I like going long right there just to ride it back to here. And on this failed break lower, this is one where you might hold a runner because a lot of times you're going to get that next leg up, and you might even catch an important low for the day, but there's your first leg, and I'd be looking for a possible measured leg. We don't quite get that, but I would also measure it to here. That would actually be my first target. And you see we got a little closer to that one, but we didn't get any higher because, and that would have got you back up to the overnight high. That's the reason I really like that target as well. But it turns out there's a trend line here, and that's the reason we couldn't really get back up there. So, but either way, that would have been a nice target. And, you know, once you got started heading lower here, I would exit. But on these first two trades, if you caught a runner on either one, like I said, I probably wouldn't hold a runner on this trade in this range, but on this failed break lower, that's the ones I like to hold a runner because you're going to catch, a lot of times you're going to catch an important low if it fails out the bottom or important high. Right here, you catch the high of the day almost. So that's an important high, and that's the reason I'd like to catch this one when it broke out the upper side. And that is a lower high. Here's your high of the day, you know, your high, and then you come up and you make a lower high, and it really kind of confirmed that trend line if you drew it across there. Big bearish bar. I like going short right there. There's a higher, lower high right here, but it's right into the EMA, and notice how we're bouncing. It did work on through, but you don't know that, and so you got to be a little careful. And you don't get another chance to enter this one. So if you didn't enter on the lower high here, you're in trouble on the, you missed this one, and there's nothing you can do. You could look at this as a failed second entry long, but you know, that's dangerous. You do come back to the trend line here, but those are, we've been way away from the EMA too long. They're dangerous trades. So, but notice we make a little double bottom, and we move up first entry, and there's a second entry here, and again it broke higher and then turned and went lower. So just like we talked about right here, you could have had your sell stop here when it broke higher and started turning down. But again, you're probably better off just to wait on it to close and drop your sell stop right there. And that was another quick, easy move. There's a failed second entry long there, but you don't want to take that one. You're just kind of going sideways here. And you've already got a break of this little trend and a new low. So it's just kind of, you're just really going sideways here. And we just keep working down. But notice we came back and tested the midline again. You get a lower high here and then a failed second entry long here. Now you got enough room to get out, and you got this secondary channel working down through here. So I don't have a problem entering on that one. And you would hope that it goes all the way down. It doesn't. It bounces here at the overnight low. And that's you had to figure that's where we're heading at this point. So when you got that little trap, you probably want to, you know, you might consider riding that down. Then we just kind of bounce. We're coming off the low, so now you only want to try to go high. You only want to go long to the long side. There's a second entry long right here after a, and you might look at this as a double test, but with it still being under the EMA there and still inside this channel, I'd probably wait on that one. And you really just don't get another opportunity to enter until you get a higher low right here. Notice you working down. You get a first entry, a second entry, and it looks like we're going to go lower, and then it bounces there, and you get that nice bullish bar. And this is looking a little flat across here. So I like going long. You don't know that it's going to be a range yet, but when it turns down there again, and then you get a double test, notice you made that low, you tested it once, you tested it twice, and you got a nice bullish bar, and it actually went lower and then turns and goes out. I like going long right there because now you've got reasons to be going long. This one's a little iffy. There's a little bit of congestion there, but we tried to go lower twice, and you really couldn't. You could have if you draw that trend line right there, but you don't know if it's coming off this high or that high, so you really can't find this one off the highs. You needed to find this one off the lows. So this one was a little more difficult to find this trend right here. And so this was really just what I liked about this one is you just got support here and you get a double test and a failed second entry short. Notice that low, it's first entry, second entry. And so that's the reason I like that one. It actually went lower and turned and went out the other side. And again, you get a nice move up. And then you're just working your way back here. You got a little trend working down. You get a break, move to a new low. And you just don't really get another good entry here. There's a higher low right here, but you got this little trend line. That's the first break, and there's not a whole lot of room. You might take that one, though. It's a failed second entry short, too. Notice that swing low, and then there's a first entry, and then a second entry, and it fails and turns up. So you might take that one. It's not a great entry, so I only marked it green. And then, of course, you make your high. You make a lower high, and you still got a little room back to the EMA, so I like that one. But when it pushes through here and pulls back and gives you that failed second entry long with that big bearish bar and confirms that little trend line, I kind of like that trade. I went back and forth whether or not to make this one green or not, because there is a little bit of support here. But this is a nice trap because I guarantee you there were people that got long right here and then suddenly they got to jump out and look at it drop down real fast. And it does come back and give you a second entry here, but it's right into a double bottom. It would have worked, but you don't know that ahead of time, and then it bounces and gives you a second entry right here, which is a better entry. You get just enough to get out here. There may be an extra tick or so, but not much. And then it reverses. And notice what happens. It breaks higher once, and then it makes a lower high and breaks higher twice. So that's a second entry long, and and you could treat this, even though it's technically not a failed second entry short, you can treat it like one. There was enough room to scalp out here, but you would expect that to go lower and not turn up. So when it turned up, I wouldn't have a problem treating that one like a failure. And it does give you enough to get a fairly nice trade, and then it turns right back down. And this is another one of those where you just don't really get a good short entry. You're looking for it to possibly make a new low off this channel right here, but it really takes on off. And it just gets, I mean, now we're just kind of meandering up and down above and below that EMA. So you really got to move to your shorter term trends here. There's a possibility right here. Notice that low, then a first entry, and then a second entry. But we're still below that EMA, and you got 3 bars stacked up there. I just feel like it's really dangerous going long there. Even though it worked, you might argue for it to be green. But if you take enough of those like that one right there, you'll probably get burned going into that EMA right there. Then it comes back, runs up. So we're really just, you can see how flat this EMA is getting, and we're just going back and forth. So this is really, and this one's a little harder. We're still making lower lows and lower highs here. And so really the bias is still mostly down here. And notice this last trend working up. You get a break, new high, you get a lower high here, and that's a nice bearish bar. I like that one. You probably couldn't get in there because notice how it gaps over that original trend line right there. But it does come back and gives you a failed second entry long, and it breaks higher again and turns down. We've seen that several times a day. I wouldn't mind, I don't have any problem entering there. And it moves on down. Then you get a break, and it's just a first entry though, and you don't really get another good entry until right here. Notice you're working down, first entry, second entry, and fairly bearish bar right off the EMA. So you may go short right there. Then it works back again, and notice what it does. First entry, second entry. Again, this is a really big bar, but since it's a failed second entry long, you could use this for your signal bar. Still not a real good entry. There's a lot of overlap there. The lows are not very long, but you got to figure we're headed down here to test these overnight low, and maybe to make a new low since we had a break of the bigger 2-tier channel. So again, you may take that one. I don't think it's a great entry. But we do work on down and make a new low. It really had to push to get down there. Notice how it's up, down, up, down. There's people down here buying left and right, trying to buy the low of the day, trying to buy the support again. And I'm sure that's probably what's going on there. And then finally, the buyers just overtake it and watch, look what happens. There's a higher low here, but that's another risky trade. We're not quite back to the EMA. It doesn't come back to what looks like ought to be the trend line. And then it pushes up and it does come back and gives you a failed second entry short and then a nice bullish bar. So I like going long right there. And that gets you in the 2 o'clock hour. So this was mostly down through here because, again, let me back out here and show this to you. If you're playing the range, we just came off the highs up here. So we should be working back down to these lows. And if you're playing the channel, that's your first break, and you would figure we're trying to retest the lows, which is exactly what happens. We work all the way down and just barely make a new low and then bounce into the 2 o'clock hour. So there's a couple different ways to see what's going on there. And, you know, you had to figure when we were working down this way, we're working down to these lows. So, but the whole idea is to understand what prices are trying to do working down here. Even though they're really, it's not happening easily, you got to look at two different things here. Hey, if this is a range day, we just came off the highs, we're probably headed to the lows. And if this is a two-tiered channel, which you can see this channel is obviously in play here, we just had a break, so where are we likely headed? Down to make a new low to test the lows again. And that's so either way, you're working down here. I looked at this a couple different ways. I really couldn't find what looked like a decent channel. If you drew it off here, that's probably where it's going to be. That looks to be correct. And if you bring it down here, but you can see you just don't really get a, and it's probably right there. And so you do get an overshoot followed by a break, but that doesn't really help you a whole lot. So I didn't use that. You were better off to use these shorter term ones because you're not sure that this is an overshoot here. And you can't be sure that this is a break here either because it never was confirmed. That's your first two swings, but it really doesn't become confirmed. It just overshoots it. So after you get enough price action, you can draw these on here and see that, hey, that's probably correct. But when you were right in here heading higher, that's hard to know. So so just keep that in mind. But anyway, that's what I saw today. Pretty good trading day. It was, like I said, it was a bit of a, did I move that? I think I moved that. Is that where it was? I'm not even sure. But anyway, when you back way out, you can see it's just a range day. And the sad thing is there's not really consistent resistance at the highs. Your one high was here, then it was down here, then it was back up here. And then coming back, it was in here. We're still working higher. But down here, it was very consistent. So relatively easy to find. There's actually, you actually might have taken this trade to the long side. It's really risky. But with that being a failed break, if this would have been a, this is really your signal bar, the big red bar. If that would have been green, I might have said, hey, you might risk that back to the EMA. Because you're, you know, everything's in place for us to bounce, especially with it with a possible failed breakout, because that's usually what happens. But again, real clear off the lows where the support is, but off the highs, and that's what makes range days hard when you don't have a consistent place where prices turn every day. When it's a different place every time, it makes it a little bit more difficult because you don't know where it's going to turn. But when it bounces consistently off the lows here just about every time, you know where it's going to turn and you know where to be prepared to look for a more obvious turning point, so to speak. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. It's almost 20 minutes worth. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. Hope you had a good trading day. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.